Mr. Speaker, continuing, that was the only bill in that category. Therefore, the next category of bills, House bills with Senate amendments, bottom of page 21. There are approximately 3 dozen bills, House bills with Senate amendments. On page 21, House Bill 709 has been taken for the day. Therefore, turning the page to page 22 of the printed calendar, the first bill, House bill with Senate amendments, is House Bill 1204. It is a bill relating to real property tax, special and separate assessment of open space in certain localities. Bill originally passed the House February 13th, subsequently passed the Senate with an amendment which is before the body.
Doug from Fairfax, Doug and Hugo.
Mr. Speaker, the Senate amendment to House Bill 1204, the open space provision applying to golf courses, simply takes the minimum acreage from 5 to 20 acres. This was at the request of Loudoun County. I hope it would be the will of the body to accept the amendment.
Delegate from Arlington, Doug at Lopez.
Speaking to the bill, Mr. Speaker.
Delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, there's a reason why so many organizations, including VACO, the Virginia Municipal League, and the Northern Virginia Conservation Trust, are opposed to this bill. The state code dictates that local assessment decisions should be made by localities. The state already has a process to appeal assessments. Taxpayers can appeal to the assessor or commissioner of the revenue, the locality's Board of Equalization, and then the relevant circuit court. This process should be followed before legislative action. Under Virginia Code, any local government which has adopted a land use plan may adopt an ordinance to provide for use value assessment and taxation of real estate devoted to agriculture, horticulture, forest, or open space use. This bill upends this decades-old policy by mandating the special assessment treatment even if the local government has not adopted an authorizing ordinance. It would require local assessing officials to provide for use value assessment of real estate dedicated open space. More importantly, this bill shatters existing state code and sets a very bad precedent in order to benefit 2 country clubs that are appealing their assessments. If approved, nothing will prevent future General Assemblies from disregarding land use and tax policy decisions that belong to local governments. And the Commonwealth won't be reimbursing local governments for lost revenues that will not be there for schools, not be there for public safety or other core services. What's more, this issue is currently under active litigation, with both clubs having filed challenges to their assessments. Also, this is not about the ability of military officers to pay. This is about sound budgetary principles for localities. Once again, there's a reason that VACO, VML, and others are concerned about implications of this bill for every locality in Virginia. What is to stop any property owner with means and time from coming to the General Assembly to appeal their local assessment? The General Assembly should not be disregarding land use and tax policy decisions that properly belong to local governments. Once again, the state should not be getting into the weeds of how a locality does tax assessments because your locality could be next. Mr. Speaker, I ask that we reject this amendment so that we can get it to conference.
Delegate from Fairfax, Doug and Hugo.
Mr. Speaker, I'd ask you to accept the amendments. Just a couple points. There is litigation, but it's for 2014. This bill is prospective and going forward. As we said before, the reason we brought it up, the 2 clubs have been in negotiations with Arlington for a number of years, and it has not been fruitful. There's been no effort on the part of Arlington to move forward. 3, these 2 clubs, the taxes paid by these 2 clubs equals the taxes paid by the next 11 clubs in Northern Virginia. These men and women, President Obama and 5,000 officers and retired enlisted soldiers at the Army Navy are being gouged by Arlington. I hope it be the will of the body to accept the amendment, move forward, and let these people enjoy this recreation. Thank you very much.
The Doug from Charlottesville, Delegate Toscano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman from Fairfax resume the floor for a question?
Will the gentleman yield for a question?
I yield, Mr. Speaker.
Delegate yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's a delegate. I'm having a hard time understanding this because it seems that this bill applies statewide, but yet everything's about Arlington. And we heard about the gentleman saying that there's an amendment on here that confines the acreage for golf clubs, but we don't know how many localities would be affected by your bill in the first place or the new amendment that's been tacked on here. In other words, is my locality affected? Is gentleman from Lynchburg or Poquoson or any of these other localities affected by basically saying, if you have a club like this in your locality, you cannot use the typical way you would use to assess its value and therefore tax it. Can the gentleman tell me how many localities would be affected by this?
Mr. Speaker, to answer the gentleman's question, potentially anyone in the Commonwealth, any jurisdiction in the Commonwealth that failed to enact an open space ordinance could potentially be impacted if they did this, if there was over 20 acres. So potentially anyone who would fail, who would not enact such an ordinance.
I thank the delegate.
Doug from Alexandria, Delegate Levine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking to the bill.
Delegate has the floor.
I'd like to draw the body's attention to Article 4, which is the power of the legislature in the Virginia Constitution, and specifically to Section 14, which is entitled Powers of General Assembly Limitations. And if you look at, it's enumerated subparagraph 5 on page 26, for those of you who have the small Virginia Constitution. It says, quote, "The General Assembly shall not enact any local, special, or private law in the following cases." Subsection 5, "For the assessment and collection of taxes, except as to animals which the General Assembly may deem dangerous to the farming interests." So the General Assembly shall not enact any local, special, or private law for the assessment and collection of taxes. I believe this law is unconstitutional, and I think that it would certainly go to the courts to decide this if we pass this law. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Shall the Senate amendment be agreed to? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 58, noes 37, abstentions 2.
Ayes 58, noes 37, abstentions 2. The Senate amendment's agreed to.